Can I respond to that?
Sure.
So again, great theory.
Yeah, it hasn't been done yet. That's true.
I'm like, okay, well, how do we make it real? And I'll tell you what, it's not easy because because there's two aspects to birthing a project, and I do think it's important to separate the ego, right? This is my brand, this is my thing, and I call it this, and how dare you try to interfere with my project, you know, and you have your project and I have my project, and that's a separation, right? But then the other aspect that I see is the necessary devotion and taking on responsibility to birth something. That requires now a lot of people find that motivation through ego or through a daddy who thought they were never good enough or whatever it is that motivates them, right? To put that energy in. But that channeling of energy necessarily, I think, creates some sense of isolation as well, because it's like, okay, say you're manifesting something, you're building something, you know, let's get specific, right? Then, you know, that takes coordination with a team, right? And that means you have to communicate. That means you have to show up to the circle and engage. And ultimately, I guess what I'm trying to say, it takes a level of commitment, right? To birth something. Now, there's always people orbiting who kind of swoop in at the last moment and help out, you know, and then they're gone. And, you know, so there's different ways to relate to a project, you know, and that's kind of how and we had a dome set up on a studio lot in downtown LA for 10 years. And it was a container for artists in LA to come in and try things, you know. And it nearly broke us holding that space, you know, because it was, I had to keep, you know, paying the bills and, you know, but just holding that space for the artists to come and play. And, you know, so it was very inclusive. You know, we had lots of people coming in for pitching us projects. But, you know, it takes energy to hold the space for those projects. And, you know, I want to amp that up. I want to do it on a bigger scale. I'd like to do it on a global scale ultimately. But, you know, when you start looking at the components that are needed, you know, I do think this distributed architectures, distributed finance and all like that has great potential for people, because when you can, so take that philosophy that we've been talking about, being inclusive and being open and having, when you can capture that algorithmically, like in a way that doesn't take human intervention every time somebody wants to engage. Because one of the biggest problems I've had, and I've seen it in this group, people come in all excited and, hey, I want to engage, I want to help, what can I do? Give me something to do. And then it's like, well, just come to the meetings, you know. Well, okay, come to the meetings. But then it's like, well, what are we making? We're not making any, you know, and then people drift away, right? It's difficult to engage people in a meaningful way. And it takes effort and energy to pull someone in, bring them up to speed, you know, and all that. But if you can automate that process and such that it can scale on its own, you know, almost, you know, like, so for instance, and this is where I'm very interested in this DAO thing as a structure. And in fact, I'm doing a clubhouse. When is that? Oh, today. I think at 4 o'clock today Pacific, on XR domes, decentralized domes, right? So you know, some hierarchical corporate structure, trying to come at it with that approach to create this network of dome theaters. It's like empire building, right? I'm like, damn, I don't, you know, it's like, that's a lot of weight to carry on the shoulders of a management team. Now we're building this empire. And it's like, what if we just had like where you could click to opt in and say, I want to be part of this community, click. I agree to these things, click, click, click. And I commit to doing this, click, you know. and then or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? It's like a way to embrace and engage in an inclusive manner and build essentially working teams that can have regional, be manifesting on regional level, but joining in some kind of a global, so we can share content and artists and speakers and teachers can tour between all of these venues and move around and all that sort of thing. It's a bigger vision, but but that I think that's maybe one way to manifest. And we're talking about a DAO at one point here. It's just, how do you get it focused enough that, it's like, it's a lot of work to put together, and it takes money too, and it takes commitment. Somebody has to birth it, right? So it's not easy. I understand that.